Welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast, conversations to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. An uplifting and inspiring series of conversations and talks with your host, Jackie Woodside. We are educating minds, empowering lives, and enlightening souls to create a world where love prevails. In this engaging podcast, we deliver exciting, positive, transformative talks and teachings designed to elevate your life. Now, let's join our host, Jackie Woodside, for this week's session.
Hi, everybody. Jackie Woodside here, founder and host of the Conscious Living Podcast, where we are here to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. You know, there's really very little in this life that's more important to me than waking up, than living life consciously, than knowing myself as God more fully, expressing my God self on earth, understanding how to use universal intelligence as my intelligence, as your intelligence. And I just find these to be such sweet and delicious topics. And, you know, every week I have the opportunity to talk to and listen to and learn from extraordinary authors, teachers, speakers, and leaders. But today is, you know, I have to say it's kind of special because Kute Blackson and I have recently just done another event together, my Conscious Living Summit. And it was a remarkable conversation that we had about consciousness and conscious living. Kute is an extraordinarily gifted teacher and speaker and transformative coach. He leads programs all around the world and has for many years. You know, despite him being younger than me, he's been doing this almost as long as I have, because he kind of was born into being a spiritual mentor, leader. Gave your first sermon at when did your father call you up? You were 12 or 13 years old to get up and speak in front of that church. I mean, you just have such an extraordinarily rich body of work. So Kute Blackson, author, spiritual teacher, coach, welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast. Go ahead and say a few more things about yourself, Kute, so people can get to know you.
Oh, thanks for having me back. It's great to be back. I always appreciate the welcome. Look, I was born in Ghana, West Africa. My father's from Ghana. My mother's Japanese. I grew up in London. I live in the US, so I feel like I'm from everywhere and nowhere. Wow. And, you know, as a young boy, I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And I think that sense of not feeling at home, not feeling a sense of belonging, not feeling also accepted by people. I'd go to Africa and I was sort of a foreigner there. I'd be in London. I didn't totally fit in there. I go to Japan, obviously didn't quite fit in there. And yet I think that pain also drove me as a young boy to begin questioning like, who am I? If I'm not this nationality and not that nationality, like, what am I and where am I and where do I belong and who am I and where is home? And so I think that drove me, you could say, without knowing, on the spiritual path from a very young age, the age-old question, who am I? And so I began asking myself that question. And I think that drove me to seeking and asking and pursuing spirituality and reading and meditating from a very young age. And so I think at a young age, I began to realize that I'm not just this body. I'm not just this kind of mind-body mechanism, this sack of flesh costume that
I call it your earth suit. Your earth suit.
The costume that we're wearing.
The costume.
So I began to more feel like I'm a soul, I'm an essence, I'm an energy. And so I always say, look, what color is the soul? What passport is the soul? What nationality is the soul? And I think that what started out as a source of pain became a real blessing, because then I began to not identify as much with my own sort of surface level, you know, egoic stuff. I began to identify more as energy, as consciousness. And I think that enabled me to focus more on how we are alike as people and as humans than how we're different. And I think that enabled me to be able to go into different cultures and different countries and feel connected to people from all walks of life. And I think that was the beautiful thing, you know, and it was a beautiful upbringing and childhood. Some would say my childhood was a bit unique, but for me, growing up, I didn't feel anything was that special, which was also a blessing. Like my first memories as a young boy was seeing a crippled woman crawling on the floor, and she picks up the sand, the gravel that this man walks on, wipes it on her face, and stands up. I guess we could call that a miracle. And so week after week, I grew up seeing miracles, blind people seeing and deaf people hearing and people standing up out of wheelchairs. And the same man whose gravel she picked up would look at a woman in a wheelchair and say, "Why are you in this wheelchair? You're not sick, stand up." And they would stand up after not having walked in 5-10 years, or somebody would come in with crutches and they were unable to walk. And he would say, "Do you believe?" And they would say, "Yeah, I believe." And then this man was my father. He would say, "Well, if you believe, why do you have these crutches? Throw them away." And he'd take the crutches, throw them away, and they would start walking. And so he was considered the miracle man of Africa. And so I grew up in this tradition. He built 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa, hundreds of thousands of followers. I call him an African, shall we say, Siddha, an African Siddha yogi, Siddha master, so to speak. He put his hands on people and they would, kind of have a Shaktipat experience. He built a huge church in London. And so, yes, at the age of 8, I started speaking in my father's churches. At the age of 14, I was ordained as a minister, given the mandate to take over my father's organization. And then I left at 18. I left everything because at 14, I knew this wasn't my path in terms of religion or the church or this organized structure. I knew that this wasn't my own, shall we say, soul's purpose and destiny. But I think like many of us, I was too afraid. I was too afraid to speak my truth. My fear was if I spoke my truth and I dared to be who I am and I dared to speak what I really wanted, that I'd lose my father, I'd be outcast, I'd be alone. And so for 4 years, I just tried to fit myself into a box of being who I thought I needed to be in order to be loved and validated by the world. And so that led to a tremendous inner turmoil and a tremendous pain. But when I turned 18, this was a pivotal moment, you could say, of becoming conscious, to becoming aware of what was really going on inside of me. I felt my soul guiding me. I felt this undeniable calling in my soul to come to America, this undeniable calling in my soul I wanted to go into the field of self-help, because I would sneak into my father's office in the church, and he had literally 1,000 books on spirituality and personal growth, and Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, the Theosophical Society, Gurdjieff, Blavatsky, Uspensky, Osho, Krishnamurti, on and on. And so I grew up reading this stuff. And so many of the modern day teachers lived in America, lived in Southern California, lived in Los Angeles, lived in San Diego. And so my soul guided me to come here. And I think sometimes, what your soul guides you to do doesn't always make sense to your logic or to your mind. Yeah. But I think through my life, I've seen that if you follow your soul and you're obedient to your soul and you listen to your soul, you'll always be guided in the right direction, in the right place at the right time, even though the path that you take and the route that you take may not be the one that you most expect. And so that's when I left everything behind, and I knew what I had to do, which was renounce everything. I renounced everything, left the church.
What do you mean by that, Kute, that you renounced everything?
I was a minister and I was the successor to my father. Yeah. And so I basically chose to have a conversation with my father, which took me 4 years to muster up the courage to have this conversation. Yeah. And 4 years of grieving before the conversation and letting go before the conversation, because I knew what this would mean to my life. And when I had the conversation, my father's old school African patriarchal dude, and it's kind of my way or my way. And so when I had the conversation with my dad, all he said was, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes." And we didn't speak for 2 years. And he didn't speak to me for 2 years. Let's put it that way. And it was challenging. Let's put it that way. It was heartbreaking. My mother was the most supportive human being I could ever have chosen as my mother.
Your father didn't tell her that she had to cut off from you. He just wouldn't interact.
No, my mother would never do that. And my father knew, but my father just, was set in his ways and wanted his way and had his vision for my life. But when I looked into my future, I saw that I could take over my father's church. I could be successful doing what he wanted me to do. But as I projected into my future, I saw that if I didn't have myself, if I didn't have my soul, if I didn't have my integrity, if I didn't have my own, my own authentic expression, that what kind of success is that you can't be truly fulfilled and happy living someone else's life, being something else that other people want you to be? And if I lie to myself at this point in my life, I'm probably gonna have to lie to myself for the rest of my life to get love, validation, and approval. And that felt so painful. And that's when we had the conversation, and he was a bit upset, but his way of expressing it was not speaking. And, you know, I think many of us, we hold back who we are out of fear. But I think deep down, all of us, we have a sense of who we are. There's a deep inkling, there's a deep knowing in terms of what we're here to do, what we're here to express. We might not know the entire path, the entire roadmap, the entire plan, but there's a part of us deep down that knows. There's a part of us deep down that knows everything, because at the deepest level, we are everything. And just sometimes we don't listen to that knowing. And I think one of the things that keeps us stuck and blocked and unhappy, unfulfilled, are all the ways that we lie to ourselves as human beings.
Yeah, absolutely.
In so many ways, we stay in relationships that we know are not aligned. We work jobs that we hate. We betray ourselves to get love, validation, and approval, and wonder why we're not happy. And so I think if somebody really wants to make a shift, I would invite people to sit with the question, like, what lies am I telling myself? To me, there is no conscious living. There is no true transformation without truth. To me, truth is real spiritual practice. Truth is real yoga. Truth is real meditation. Truth is real therapy. And I think so much of the problems and issues and challenges in our lives that we're facing would dissolve if we really started to tell ourselves the truth. And so just to begin the conversation, I would just invite people to sit with, okay, what lies am I telling myself? What am I pretending to not know? What is it costing me? Because when we lie to ourselves, it's painful. When we don't tell ourselves the truth, it hurts. It's meant to be painful. It's not meant to feel good. You know, many of the untruths or the lies that we tell ourselves that we suppress deep down will end up manifesting, like our unconscious will end up manifesting in emotional pain, will end up manifesting in depression and sadness and heaviness and lethargy and lack of feeling alive, will end up manifesting as some physical pain, tension in the body, a backache, a shoulder ache, a neck ache, you know, or maybe even manifesting in some kind of ongoing dis-ease. It's like our unconscious trying to get our attention through our own body, through somatically. And so I think if we can just start with the truth, the courage to just acknowledge the truth. Sometimes we're afraid of telling ourselves the truth because we're afraid of the consequences. I was terrified of the consequences. So for 4 years, I just tried to fit myself into a box to be who I thought my father and the world wanted me to be, and I became more miserable in the process. But if we can just start with the truth and take the pressure off of yourself of having to take action, and just start with the truth, because sometimes the fear of the consequences, it's like the ego kicks in, a self-protective mechanism, and we play this game of, oh, I'm confused, I'm not sure, I don't know, when deep down we know, and it's self-protection, the fear of the outcome, the fear of the unknown. So I think if we can take the pressure off of taking action and just simply acknowledge the truth, which might just sound like, I'm not happy, might sound like, I hate my job, might sound like, I'm not in love. It might sound like, you know what? I have an alcohol problem. Doesn't mean you have to break up or leave your job or do anything, but just to get into relation, just to become conscious and have the courage to acknowledge the truth. To me, there's no conscious living until we start acknowledging what is, until we start acknowledging how we feel, until we start acknowledging what's there, until we really start acknowledging the deeper levels of truth inside. And so I think in many ways we learn to rationalize and justify what we're doing in order to keep ourselves safe, in order to get love, validation, approval, in order to not feel certain things. And so to me, it's the truth that sets us free. And so I had to start by telling the truth at 18 and 17 and a half. And it was scary and terrifying. But long story short, I ended up winning a green card in the green card lottery that enabled me to come to the US as an 18-year-old kid and follow my dreams. And that's what brought me $800 at 18 years old to America Los Angeles specifically, landed at LAX, went to Venice Beach for the first 2 weeks, cried my eyes out for the first 2 weeks.
I'm sure.
Wanted to turn back.
Yeah.
But I felt that there was something deeper than myself guiding me. I felt that there was a deeper calling, a deeper something in my soul that was pushing me forward. And I just chose to listen to that. You know, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea where I was going. Sometimes there's this idea that you have to have it figured out, and you have to have a plan, and you have to know where you're going, and you have to have it mapped out. But I really believe that you don't really have to know where you're going to get to exactly where you need to be, because there's moments in our lives where we think we know where we're going, but we really just have the illusion of knowing. And there's moments where we really don't think we know where we're going, and it seems like we're lost, but we're actually closer than we appear, because we're just following the pure sort of nudging and intention of our essence, of our souls. And so I just followed, and that's what I did. And that led me to meeting many of the teachers and the mentors and authors I read about, studied with some of them, and a couple of years of being in the US, I ended up traveling. And this is where everything changed for me in terms of my spiritual growth. I ended up going to Israel, studying with a few rabbis, went to Thailand, studied with a few monks, walked the Camino in northern Spain, and ended up in India. And it was really my time in India that I would say cracked me open to another dimension of myself and my purpose and reality. And that's when I came back to America and began coaching people. Again, no idea what I was doing, but 20 some years ago, began just a sincere intention to be of service. I wanted to be of service. I wanted to help people. And so that drove me. And one person showed up, another person showed up, another person showed up, and I just did my best. And then eventually, with a bit of time, I created I hate to say a methodology, but a way of working with people that I called uncoaching. And I created a process that was designed to help people transform and heal. And one person radically changed. And he started referring people to me, and people started literally coming from around the world to do this intensive uncoaching process with me. And the word spread, and my coaching practice grew, and small groups, larger groups, 2 books, and kind of here we are.
Can you tell us a little bit about it, the uncoaching process? What, how do you engage with people? What is uncoaching? What does it look like?
I would say there's not a formula, and there's not one methodology. That's why I don't like to call it a methodology, because I think every human being is organic and different. And everyone, when we try to, from the outside in, fit people into like, this is how we're going to work with you, I think it's limiting, because everyone is different. Everyone has different childhood and upbringing and belief systems and structures and ways that we were conditioned. And so I think everyone has to be worked with intuitively and individually in a way that's customized. And so in essence, I feel as though we are all already whole, perfect, and complete. We're all that. I mean, if you look at a baby when they're born, they're like connected to the divine. A child, when they're incarnate into this human experience, you look into their eyes, it's literally like the light of God looking at you. When you look into their eyes, there's no conditioning, there's no judgment, there's no past, there's just pure presence. Right? Yes, and we're all in touch with that at some point in our lives. And so for me, the essence is, what the hell happened to us? What happened to most of us? And so we incarnate in this pure state of bliss, love, openness, compassion, alignment. And we meet our parents, and God bless them. Our parents, they're just doing the best that they know how to do based on their childhood and their parents and their conditioning and their traumas. And so many of our parents were unconscious, and they didn't have access to this Conscious Living podcast, Conscious Living Summit. They didn't have access to the books and the tapes, and, they were just living their life. And so we're now born into sort of a preset pattern of conditioning, dysfunction, programming, so to speak. And maybe dad was crazy. Maybe mom is an alcoholic. Maybe they were fighting all the time. Maybe there was divorce. Maybe one of them wasn't around. Maybe there was alcoholism, some kind of addiction. Maybe they were great people, and they just didn't know how to meet our emotional needs in a certain way. And that was painful for us. And sometimes the more obvious sort of experiences are easier to work with. Sometimes when there's not a whole lot of obvious pain and trauma and dysfunction, it's a little harder because we think everything was fine. But still, sometimes just not having your needs met as a child, even though childhood was relatively good, that can still create some pain. And so as children, I think unconsciously a couple of things happen. The first thing is we sort of unconsciously learn to shut down, suppress, disconnect from the pain. Maybe it was painful to feel helpless, so I learned to suppress, disconnect, close, suppress the pain, suppress the sadness, suppress that feeling, suppress, and before you know it, layers and layers of unfelt, through decades, perhaps, a decade or two, layers of unfelt feeling, unfelt grief, unfelt sadness, unfelt helplessness, unfelt pain, unfelt anger, unfelt resentment builds up. And before you know it, begins to cover up our essence, and our true light and our true capacity to feel gets hidden underneath the layers and layers and layers of suppressed feeling. And now we close our heart, so to speak, as a strategy and mechanism to not feel the pain of what was happening. And then I think we learn a way of being, much of which is happening unconsciously for us. We learn a way of being in order to, like, who do I need to be in order to get love and validation? Oh, when I'm this way, Dad loves me. For me, as a young boy in my father's church, it was being the good boy, being the preacher's kid, the good boy, the responsible one, the caretaker one. Oh, Kute's so great. Kute's so amazing. He's so perfect. Doesn't cause any trouble. And so there was in an effort to be loved and validated and liked and fit in, I think as human beings, unconsciously, we get conditioned and we learn all sorts of strategies we develop a role and a mask and a persona in order to get love, in order to fit in. And before you know it, we suppress parts of ourselves, we betray, we lie, we betray parts of ourselves in order to get the love, validation, and approval from parents. And we contort ourselves into a kind of shape, so to speak. And we think that the version of ourselves that we've been conditioned to become is who we are. The challenge is, and we hold so tightly to that way of being because it keeps us safe and avoids pain and gets us love, validation, approval, gets reinforced by those around us. And we think that's who we are, but it's not really who we are. It's what we've been conditioned to believe, is what we've been conditioned to be. And the tighter we hold on to that way of being and those mechanisms, shall we say, the less fluidity, the less choice, the less flexibility we have to be truly conscious and present in the moment. Many of us, we're not living consciously. The degree to which we're conditioned is the degree to which we're not free to truly choose. And we're not living consciously. We're actually unconsciously being run by programs and fears and pain and reactivity from the past that we're not even conscious and aware of. And we just, that's when people often say, no, this is me. This is who I am, Jackie. This is me. But is it really us? Is who we've become who we really are? We often say, oh, I'm just shy. I'm just this way. Is it really who we are? Or is it just what we've been conditioned to be? And so I think for me, just in essence, like what I really help people do through certain processes and whether it's one-on-one, whether it's small groups, larger groups, is I kind of design a process. First, it was one-on-one, right, for an individual that helps people become conscious and aware of the fact that they're conditioned, to become conscious and aware of their patterns and their programmings, and to see that, because I think one of the first steps is awareness, to become conscious. Like there is no transformation until we truly become conscious.
Right, it has to start there.
Yeah, and so from that point, then I help people sort of get in touch with the feelings that we've learned to suppress and disconnect from and press down so deeply that we many times don't even know is there. And so it's a process of becoming aware of our conditioning and programming, and a process of learning how to deal with the feelings that we've learned to suppress so that we can let go, we can release.
So, Kute, is there anyone who's not programmed and conditioned, or is this just the human condition?
I would say that we are all programmed and conditioned in some way.
Yeah.
You know, even the Dalai Lama is programmed and conditioned because, you know, some might believe, oh, he's an enlightened being. But the truth is, on some level, he's been told from childhood, you're the Dalai Lama. You're the Dalai Lama. You're the Dalai Lama. You're the great one. You're the and so, I mean, hell, Jackie, if you and I were told that you were the blah 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 Lama, you know, from the moment you were born or age 4, you would probably start believing how amazing and incredible you are in certain ways, right? And so, I think the process of conditioning in the human experience is unavoidable.
Yes.
It is part of the human process.
Yes.
It is part of the human incarnation. To me, we incarnate into this human experience as souls. We're souls.
Yes.
And we incarnate into this human experience in order to learn, in order to grow, in order to evolve. And ultimately, to me, life is like a university for our soul's evolution. And everything is part of that curriculum. And everybody is our teacher. And so often that first lesson in conditioning begins with our family system and begins with our parents. And that's where the conditioning begins. And so I would say in many ways, conditioning is unavoidable,
right?
Is part of the human game and the human process that we incarnate. We get conditioned, and you know, all of us experience some level of pain and trauma, even if it's minimal, but there's some level of it in the human experience that is life. And I think part of the game of life is we incarnate in order to learn, to grow and evolve, to learn the lessons inherent in every situation, and so that we can realize who we truly are and awaken out of the conditioning so that we can awaken to who we really are prior to that conditioning, to our true essence, to our true light, to our true awareness, to our true beingness. And I think that's part of the game of life. You know,
I think that's an important message, you know, for people to understand there's nothing wrong with you per se. This really is part of the human condition. And I think part of what has people be reticent to look at these questions, to ask, I love how you open today. What lies are you telling yourself? And I think what makes it difficult sometimes is, you know, for people to ask those questions or do this inner work is equating, if I'm doing this work, does it mean there's something wrong with me? So one of the things I like to bring forth is that conscious living really just means looking at where you are in your process of human evolution to, you know, to kind of minimize the impact of the ego on your experience in life and to bring forth your higher essence, because that's what we are all here to do. So, I just wanted to add that in. Oh, and you also said it begins with our parents. And I know you share this belief. It actually begins before your parents.
Yes, it begins before. Yes.
It begins in your ancestry. It begins in your culture. It begins in your religion. We all have inherited so much intergenerational, and there's really good research now on intergenerational trauma and the impact.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important, I'm glad you said that. I think one of the most important things that we can do, especially parents that say, oh, how can I raise my kids? How can I impact my kids? What can I do for my kids? I think one of the most important things we can do is to heal ourselves. Because what I feel is the unresolved pain, hurt, trauma, shame, guilt, whatever's unresolved that we carry, secrets, that energy will get passed down to the next generation.
Absolutely.
And so I think if we have the courage, and to me, this is a mandate for like why we must heal, because if we have the courage that I will heal myself, but I will also do the heat, because many of us too, we are acting out and playing out many of the unresolved energies and frequencies and impulses and traumas of our grandparents and our parents that weren't resolved, addictions and impulses and secrets and shames that then no one was aware, they weren't conscious of, or they didn't have the courage to face and deal with. So now that energy flows to us. And so I know years ago, I would often feel certain impulses inside of me, like, why do I feel this way? And many of us maybe have the feeling that you're like The life you're living is a recreation of your parents or certain impulses that you have. Like, why do I have this addictive impulse? Because often it's an energy that's passed down. That's not an excuse. But I think when we can realize that you and I, we have the power and ability to end it. We have the power and ability to change it. We have the power and ability to be the ones that shifts the energy, shifts the karma, to do the healing. And as we heal ourselves, then we get to pass on a different frequency, vibration, and consciousness to the next generation. When I look at my son is 6 months now. When I look at my son, he's a little baby, and he just looks at me like, oh my God, just pure essence. He's like not really conditioned yet, right? And so when I look at him, he carries the vibration and the frequency of all of the healing I have done. All of the healing that I had the courage to do, to shift, to heal my father's, incomplete karma and tendencies, and my grandfather's and, male patriarchal energies. When I look at my son, he carries such a light and a vibratory frequency that when I look at him, I know that he is the sort of end result or the fulfillment of the healing of my own consciousness and inner work. And so I think the greatest gift that we can give our children is to do our healing. The greatest true generational wealth is not just what we give them in a trust account or bank account, but is the clear, spacious, evolved consciousness of truly having healed. That is what will, I would say, continue. And that's the gift, that's the true gift. So to live consciously, I think, is not to be perfect, because in the human incarnation, there is no perfection. To me, the goal of the spiritual path is not to reach some false enlightened state of being perfect, never getting mad, never getting angry, never getting sad, never feeling emotions, just always being zen all the time. There's no amount of therapy, meditation, plant medicine, whatever you want to, no amount of anything will perfect your personality. The personality is not perfect. We live in the 3D. We live in the 3D realm of duality, interdependent polaric opposites. That's the nature of life. And so the personality never going to be perfect. There's always going to be imperfections, and that's perfect. And so I think part of being conscious is being aware. Part of being conscious is being awake and aware to all aspects of ourselves, being awake and aware to the shadow, being awake and aware to our tendencies, being awake and aware to our addictions, being awake and aware to our motivations, and having the courage to be honest about it, to say, this is what's driving me. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is what's motivating me. This is where I'm at. This is where I'm not at. This is where my edge is. This is where my room for growth is. And when we can be honest about that without judgment, to me, that is being conscious. And when we're conscious, then that consciousness gives us access to choice. And that being conscious gives us the ability to now know where we can do our inner work so that we can heal. Because if we're lying to ourselves about something, like, oh, no, I'm fine, I don't have a problem with alcohol, I don't have a problem with weed, no, I'm fine, then we can never deal with the emotions and feelings that are underneath that, because we're so busy suppressing it and being unconscious about it.
And I just want to add too that the healing process and the growth of conscious living, it is a lifelong journey. It's not like, oh, I did that one, check. I learned to drive, I healed, I'm
healed, check, done.
Right. It's not like that. It's just so fascinating. In some ways, we are healing from the human condition. And that's a day-to-day process of recognizing where we get hooked, where we get triggered, and continuing to peel back that onion, to the place of just pure presence, like your 6-month-old beautiful son, to that place of pure presence. And I don't know if there's a time that you get there and just stay there. And I know people talk about they're enlightened, but the process of healing, it really is something that is a lifelong journey. Yes, you can have massive jumps, massive transformations in healing and consciousness. You can put those addictions to bed. You can put that hurt relationship behind you. But, wait till tomorrow.
Yeah. I think what happens, at least what I've observed, is your relationship with things shift.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's part of it is you become more conscious, because when, let's say, if you haven't done the healing, then many times those unconscious pains, traumas, addiction will run you, and you won't see them, and you'll collapse into them maybe for weeks, and you'll be in a kind of contracted reactivity for days or weeks, and you won't even realize it until, oh, why do I feel? I've been feeling bad. I feel horrible. But I think when we become conscious, we start becoming more present and attuned to ourselves, so that we start feeling, oh, I'm noticing something's off inside. Yes. And rather than it taking 2 weeks when we're already on the floor and feeling depressed, we start to become more attuned and aware, moment to moment to moment to moment to moment, what is going on inside of our mind and our thoughts and our emotions and our body, so that we start to increasingly catch it earlier on. It's like, feeling something's happening in my gut. Yeah. Oh, something felt off in terms of that interaction, and I'm feeling a twinge of something. And so we don't have to wait till 2 weeks. Now we're in a raging fit. We feel it in that initial moment. We're conscious of that subtle sensation in that moment, so that we can process and deal with it and let go of it in the moment.
Not only do we not have to wait the 2 weeks, we also don't have to project it outward to someone else, lashing out, being playing the victim, being angry, blaming other people. When you get conscious, exactly as you said, it's like, oh, I'm noticing me.
Yeah.
I'm noticing that I'm have a reaction to that. And I think when you're unconscious, there is this tendency to project outward of you made me mad, you upset me. Yes. And being conscious, doing the healing journey, having a different relationship with work or money or substances, because you can actually see, the point here is me, is my dependency, is my fear, is my insecurity. And as I heal that through the light of consciousness, through knowing that I'm one with the universe, one with God, through claiming my own authority of my own life, you do develop power. One of the goals of this series is empowerment. And I don't mean that in some worldly way. I mean empowering yourself to know who you really are.
Absolutely. That's the ultimate conscious, being conscious of who you are.
Of who you are. Yeah, not telling lies.
To become conscious of that which is always conscious.
Yeah. Oh, that's delightful. Yeah. To be conscious of that which is always conscious. And, we can begin wrapping up here by going right back to where you began. What lies are you telling yourself? Right? Where can you become conscious of where you've gone unconscious, so that consciousness itself can be present in your life?
Yes, exactly.
So great. Kute, you've got such a wonderful body of work. I know you've got an event coming up, I think in Bali. Yeah, in Bali.
Yeah.
So tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, look, this December the 5th through the 16th, I do my signature event. I do this event twice a year. I've done this event 21 times. This will be number 22. It is perhaps my highest level of work, and it's transformational. We've done it for about 11 years. This is the final time I'm doing this event in Bali, and this is the final event I'm doing in Bali ever. And the final 12-day event I'm doing, as I'm moving into a new phase and creating different events and seminars. And so I would say, for those listening, if you're someone, you feel that you've been put on the planet for a purpose that is bigger than yourself. Maybe you feel a calling, a destiny, a deep desire, a burning desire to make a difference in people's lives. You're ready to heal. You're sick and tired, and you're like, you know what? The time is now. I'm ready for my next level, and I'm ready to heal. And you're ready to connect with your power and your voice and share your gifts with the world. Then the event is called Boundless Bliss, the Bali Breakthrough Experience. It's 12 days with me, 18 people in Bali. It's an immersion seminar, experiential seminar training without walls, where I use Bali as the backdrop. And I would say it's pretty much unlike any Bali retreat or any retreat I know of. So it's quite unique. It's immersive, it's unique, it's intense days, but it's truly profound and transformative.
Sounds extraordinary.
People can go to www.boundlessblissbali.com, boundlessblissbali.com. We have a few spots left.
Okay.
They can just apply there and have an interview.
It's an interview to participate. Wow, that's awesome. Wow, what a beautiful curated body of work that you have. And I'm looking forward to your next expression, Kute, as you're moving forward into doing new events and different kinds of events. I really, I'm just such a fan of you and your work and what you bring to the world. So thank you for your generosity, your love, and your wisdom here at the Conscious Living Podcast. It's always great to collaborate with you.